Okay, let's do the review for final. For the problem 8, let's skip it. We cover this throughout the courses. So let's do some word problems first. Let's see on problem B. First one. Find the two consecutive even integers that have sum of 450. Okay, so for word problems, so how should we start? We always do the things we need to identify first, right? Identify things needed with how many variables? With only one variable, right? Because you only know how to do the one variable. So how many numbers do we need? We say find the two consecutive even integers. So we need the two numbers, right? Then consecutive means what? Continuous, and one after the other. And for even integer, so for the things we don't know, what do we use? X. But we need two numbers. First one is x, next one would be what? For even integers, so it jumps 2, right? So that would be x plus 2, right? Then what's the second step? Write your equation. So it says have sum of 450. So sum means what? Total. Total would be 450 for these two numbers. Then sum means what? You add them up, right? Then what's the next step? You solve it. So do we have a linear equation? So what do we have here? 2x plus 2 equals 450. Then what do we do? Okay, move number to one side, move variable to one side, right? Then what's your x? Divided by 2, so your x is what? 224. Then what was the question? Two consecutive integers. So one number is this, another one is 2 more, so that would be your answer, right? Next one, third problem, okay? Lowenda and Betty both drive the same distance to the shore. By driving 15 miles per hour faster than Betty, Lowenda can get there in 3 hours, while Betty takes 4 hours. How fast does each of them drive? So for Lowenda and Betty, right, both drive same distance to the shore. One is driving faster. And we said, how do we do third problem? You have two persons all needed to do the calculation, right? So we put the calculation on the top will be what? R times T equals distance. R is what? Miles per hour times is by the hour. Distance is the miles. So for cases, different cases, you write it on the left hand side, right? Then calculation, you write on the top. Then what was the question? How fast does each of them drive? So we say for the things we don't know, we use what? we say x, right? If Lowanda is driving x miles per hour, then which one is faster by driving 15 miles per hour faster than Betty? Lowanda get there in 3 hours. So for Lowanda is what? 3 hours. Betty is 4 hours, right? And Betty is slower or faster than Lowanda. So Lowanda is 15 miles per hour faster. So Lowanda is x. Betty would be what? 15 minus x, right? Then we don't know the distance either, but from the calculation, speed times time is your miles, right? So that would be 3x. Here would be what? 4 times x minus 15. So first step, you write your table for third problem, right? Then second step, we will write our equation. We must have something the same distance, right? So you do 3x equals what? 4x minus 15, right? Then third step, we will solve it. So we distribute, so that would be 4x minus 60, that would be 3x, right? Then move your variable to another side. So what do we have? Negative x equals negative 60. So what's your x? Divided by negative 1, x is 60. What is 60? Dollars? Goats? Then you look back. What's your x? Speed of Lowanda, right? That would be miles per hour for Lowanda, right? Then what's the Betty's speed? Betty would be 15 miles per hour slower, so that would be 45, right? Then that would be your answer, but how do you know you are right? So you check. How do you check? Lowanda is driving 60 miles per hour for how long? 3 hours. So 60 times 3, that would be 180 miles, right? Total. Then for Betty, 45 miles per hour for how many hours? 4. So you times 4, it's 180 miles as well. Are they the same? Yes, that was the what the problem was saying, right? So that's how we check. Good. Next one. The length of a rectangle lot is 50 feet, more than its width. Okay, so we have what? Width for rectangle would be what? Width and the length. Then we don't want to use two variables. Then it says what? Length is 50 feet more than its width. So that would be 50 feet more than its width, right? So the length will be what? The width plus another 50 feet, right? So we use the picture to help us to visualize it. So for the first step, we say identify things we needed and with one variable. So it says if the perimeter is 500 feet, then what's the length? What are the length and width? So we need both width and length, right? For two variables we need, but only, two things we needed, but only with one variable, right? So if width is W, then what's your length? 50 feet more would be what? W plus 50. Is that right? Okay. Second one, we say what? We will write the equation. Then the total is what? Perimeter is 500 feet. Perimeter means what? Around. So if W here would be W plus 50 there, here would be what? W plus 50, right? So total is what? 500. So how do we do the total or around? Would be W plus what? W plus 50 plus W plus 50, right? So that would be your equation. Then third step would be solving that. So we combine like terms. So do we have a linear equation? So combine like terms would be 4W plus 100 equals what? 500. Then to solve it would be what? Minus 100, right? So that would be 4W for 400 divided by 4. W is 100. You need to describe 100 of what? Not the dollars. Is what? Feet for the width, right? Then it also asks you what's the length. Length is saying 50 feet more. That would be 150 feet, right? So that would be the word problems. You practice a few besides those 3 examples we give to you. You also have other types, right? Percentage, and what else we have? Like interest, I equals PRT as well, right? So you go back to look your homework, and from 3.1 through 3.5, right? For all the apps applications. We also said in this class we learned 3 things, right? Which 3? First one, solving linear equations and inequalities, right? Second one, graphing linear equations and inequalities. Then third one was polynomials, right? Add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Basic skills, plus scientific notations. Okay, so that's a review. First one, here is the solving and graphing. All right, so for graphing, we have 3 methods, right? So we say graphing with 3 methods. One is what? Using t-table. T-table with how many points? 3 points, right? You can use 0, 1, 2, or 0, 2, 4, or 0, 3, 6, whichever give you good numbers, right? Then second method is what? Using t-table with how many points? 3. First one is 3 points, right? Second one is 2 points. Not any 2 points. Special 2 points is what? 0, 0, right? X and Y intercept. If X is 0, that would be your Y intercept. Y is 0, that would be your X intercept, right? Then third one was what? Using slope intercept for Y equals mx plus b, right? So b is your what? Y intercept. Then m is your slope, rise over run, things like that. You find the point, you graph them that way. right? So 3 different methods. We also have 3 different forms. Okay, let's graph it first. So first one, 3x plus 5y equals 15. Do I have linear equations, right? And it says use the xy intercept. So use the second method. So that would be what? Xy 0, 0. So x is 0, you plug in 0, 5y equals 15. Y would be what? Divided by 5, that would be 3, right? So that's your y-intercept. If y is 0, you plug in y is 0. Negative 3x equals 15. So divided by negative 3, x would be what? Negative 5, right? That's your x-intercept. Then, how do you graph it? You do 0, 3, right? 0, 3. That would be your y-intercept on the y-axis. Then x-intercept is what? Negative 5, right? Negative 5 and 0. So it's right here on the x-axis. So you connect the line, then put the 2 arrow right on the end to graph the line. So that's how we do, right? With the second method. Next one, we just plug 3 points. So for 3 points, that would be second one, negative 2x plus 3y equals 12. So we use 3 points. That would be method 1, right? So you can use 0, 1, 2, 0, then 1. That will give you the fraction. So since y is what? Multiple of 3, right? You want to divide it by 3. So x better would be multiple of 3. Okay, it will work better. So x is 0. 0 here, 3y equals 12. So y is what? Divided by 3. That would be 4, right? And when x is 3, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Then you plus 6 on each side would be 18. 3y equals 18 divided by 3. 3y is 18. So y is what? 6, right? I didn't write it down everything, but you should be able to figure out. So x is 6. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. Negative 12 plus each side with 12. That will be 24. 3y equals 24 divided by 3. Y is what? 8. Is that right? So we have what? 0, 4. Okay. 3, 6. About here. 3, 6. And what? 6, 8. 6, 8 is about here. Right? Connect all the points and with the arrow keys on both sides. That would be your graph. Right? And if we have this one, say that's just a simple one, equals 8. Then we ask you if xy, x is 4, y is negative 1. What's the order of the pairs? So what do? It's just your t-table, so you plug in, figure out, right? So this one, x is 4. So that would be here, 4, that would be 4 plus 2y equals 8, right? Then minus 4, so 2y would be what? 4. Then what's your y? So y would be 2, right? Then if y is -1, you plug in here. So x plus 2 times -1 would be 8. Then that would be x minus 2 equals 8. U plus 2 on each side. X equals what? 10. That would be your 10. Just plug in doing your t table. Right? Okay. Then we also, for the linear equations, then we said there are 3 forms we usually use, right? First one would be what? Standard form. That would be ax plus by equals c, right? Then second one would be what? That's a standard form. xy on one side of the equation. Second one is a slope-intercept form. Y equals what? mx plus b, right? So usually the result we will write in either form, right? Then third one, just intermediate form, temporary, right? We call it what? Point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals what? M times x minus x1, right? If we know the point, we know the slope, we can write the equation. We do the opposite. We can use those forms to graph, right? And write the final answer as a line, or we can use this intermediate one to plug in to write the intermediate form, then eventually we rewrite as regular form, okay, for the line. If we give you a line, you have to write the equation. We can use the third one, okay? So let's take a look. The next one. Write the equation of the line which contains the point 1592. Okay, so we want to write the equations for the line which pass through these 2 points and write your final answer in standard form like those. So one is what? 1, 5. 1 and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right here, 1, 5. Right? Another one is what? 9, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2. Right here. Right? So we wanted to describe the line, go through these 2 points. We know the line now. Then, but we have to write the equation for it. So look at that. So slope is positive or negative. If it falls from left to right, that would be what? Negative slope. Right? So we have to find the slope first. If we know the slope, we can plug in what? Point slope form with one of the point. So what's your slope? Slope is rise over run, right? Now it's dropping from 1, 2, 3. Dropping 3, walk over how many? From 1 to 9, that's 8, right? Difference. Then this one is what? Drop 3. So the slope is what? Negative, right? Rise over run. Rise is what? Negative 3 over run over 8. Right? So that's your slope. Then we use point slope form with 2 points. 2 numbers. One for this point, right? Order the pairs. So for equation, we always have what? Y and x. And your slope is what? So that's slope. Slope is negative 3/8, right? Then we have to do minus y1 and x1. So we need one of the point. We just need 1 point. You can use either one, right? So point slope form. Point with slope. So that's your x1, y1. So y minus y1. y1 is what? 5, right? And x minus x1. x1 is what? 1, right? So that's your equation. That's just intermediate step. Then we have to write the final answer in this style, standard form, right? So we just cleaned up. We distribute y minus 5 equals what? Negative 3x 3/8 x negative times negative is positive 3/8, right? Then we move number away plus 5. So y equals negative 3/8 x 5 plus 3/8. Okay? So usually it's a 5 3/8. But we don't write it in mixed number anymore. We write it in what? In proper fraction. So you combine them with LCD. That's 8, 40, 3/8. That would be what? 43/8. Right? So that would be plus 43/8. That's what? Slope-intercept form. But we have to write it in standard form, means what? X and Y have to be on the same side of equations. So you do what? Plus 3/8 x on both sides, right? And what do we have? So we have 3/8 x plus y equals what? 43/8. Right? So that would be your answer. Good? Then let's see. So we are graphing linear equations. Also, we solve linear equations and inequalities. So you know how to solve linear equations now. Let's review the inequalities. Okay, first one, 3 minus 2x over 5 greater than or equal to 7. We said, solve linear inequalities are the same as solving linear equations, except what? We call it silver rule instead of a golden rule, right? And when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you switch the direction of inequalities. That's the only difference between equations and inequalities. Okay? And this one you have fractions. We don't like fractions, so what should we do? We will multiply everything by the LCD, right? 5. So that would be 3 minus 2x over 5 times 5 greater than 7 times. Do we change the direction? No, because we multiply by a positive number, right? So this cancel. 3 minus 2x greater than or equal to 35. Then we do same thing as the equation. Get x by itself. Minus 3, right? So cancel out negative 2x and 32. Do we change the direction right now? No, we just add and subtract. We don't change the direction unless we multiply or divide by a negative number. So now we divide by negative 2. So that would be x, that would be negative 16. Do we change the direction? Yes, because it's divided by negative 2, negative number. That's your x. Also, we will show the answer in graph and an interval notation. Okay, so that would be negative 16 equals this part, right? With bracket. If you're showing interval notation, that would be negative infinity to negative 16 included with bracket. If it's included the endpoint, you use bracket. Otherwise, you use parentheses, right? Then look at the next one. Negative 7 less than 3x plus 2. So this one more than one inequality signs. Then we have 3 parts. Then same thing, we say if you do one part, you do all parts, right? So get x by itself. Usually you leave x in the middle. So we minus 2, right? So that would be negative 9. Cancel, that would be 11. Do we change the direction of inequalities? No. Then get x by itself divided by 3. That would be negative 3 and x, then 11/3. No changing for the sign. Then we also graph it with the answer. Then that would be negative 3 here. That would be what? 11/3 here, right? X is in between, right here. Then this one is a parenthesis. This one you have equal sign, include a boundary point. Also, we will write it in an interval notation. So that would be negative 3 to 11/3, inclusive with bracket and parenthesis on this side, right? Okay, so that would be our review for the graphing and solving linear equations and inequalities. Okay, then for polynomials, we will do add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Also, because polynomials, what are polynomials? Polynomials, poly means many, many terms, and each term will look like what? Something to the powers, x to the power, right? Each term will be like those, then with what? Coefficient in front of it. So it's many, many of those terms added together, right? X can be x to the 0 power, x to the 1 power, square, third, and on. Not the negative though. So your each n will be what? 0, 1, 2. Then also you have constant, right? And we will do add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So since it's a power, then we'll review some powers as well, okay? Usually we write it in the positive exponents. So if we have, remember this, x squared times x fifth, right? How many x's? Total. Shorthand writing. One term times one term. Mono times mono. 1 times 1, still one term, right? So if you have x squared, x fifth, x third, that will be total would be what? 10th, right? But if power on power, then x squared to the 5th, how many x's we have? That will be 10. You multiply them, right? And if we have x squared, one term, times x fifth, x third, one term times two terms, mono times final, 1 times 2, would be two terms. Then you distribute, right? So that would be x7 plus x5. You need to differentiate them. One term times one terms, one term times one term times one. 1, 1, 1 is still 1. But the 1 times 2 becomes 2 terms, right? We also learned negative exponent, right? Same thing, it applies to x negative 2 to the 5th would be what? X negative 10, right? Then if you have x negative 2 to the negative 5th would be what? You multiply power and power property, that would be positive 10, right? We also say anything to the 0 power is what? 1. Base cannot be 0, but power can be 0, right? So we say when we learn the polynomials with many, many terms, we also learn the powers, how to operate them, and use the property. Even the power is negative, it should be okay, right? Then we say power, if it's negative, doesn't mean negative. It means what? Reciprocal, means 1 over x, right? X negative 2 means what? 1 over x squared, right? So we operate on the powers. Then we simplify them. Okay, so we also did, let's review some for the first one. It's the same thing as in your exam 3, we did this as well. So when you review for final, and you can use this review paper as well, and also your previous exams. Make sure you go through all those. See if you still remember, okay? So if we simplify this, what do we need to do? Too many x's, too many powers. So the simplest form is what? Just simple fraction. One numerator, one denominator, right? Then numbers with numbers. Then if it's just x, you should have one variable, same variable with one individual power, right? So we say, if so, we distribute. That means what? Negative 3 take a square, and x third take square. Here 4 take a negative third power, right? And x squared take negative 3 power. Then here is x negative 2. Here is what? Negative 3 and negative 4 multiply them would be 12, right? Then we do it individually. So negative 3 squared is what? 9. All of them are multiplying together, right? X 3 to the second would be power on power. You multiply x 6. 4 to the negative 3 is what? 4 negative 3. You cannot multiply them. You cannot see. We say negative exponent means what? Reciprocal. So this x is negative 6, right? This is negative 2, right? Then when it's a negative power, we need to flip. So 9 is here, x6 is here. 4 to the negative 3, do we need to flip? Right? So this one is a negative 3, we need to write a 4. Once it flips, then negative power is gone. And do we need to flip this? Yes, to here, right? Then here is a negative 2, we need to flip to the top, becomes x squared, right? Then this is notation, okay? So that would be negative 16, it goes this part, right? With bracket. If you're showing interval notation, that would be negative infinity to negative 16 included with bracket. If it's included the endpoint, you use bracket. Otherwise, you use parentheses, right? Then look at the next one. Negative 7 less than 3x plus 2. So this one more than one inequality signs, then we have 3 parts. Then same thing, we say if you do one part, you do all parts, right? So get x by itself. Usually you leave x in the middle. So we minus 2, right? So that would be negative 9. Cancel all, that would be 11. Do we change the direction of inequalities? No. Then get x by itself divided by 3. That would be negative 3 and x, then 11/3. No changing for the sign. Then we also graph it with the answer. Then that would be negative 3 here. That would be what? 11/3 here, right? X is in between, right here. Then this one is a parenthesis. This one you have equal sign, include a boundary point. Also, we will write it in an interval notation. So that would be negative 3 to 11/3, inclusive with bracket and parenthesis on this side, right? Okay, so that would be our review for the graphing and solving linear equations and inequalities. Okay, then for polynomials, we will do add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Also, because polynomials, what are polynomials? Polynomials, poly means many, many terms, and each term will look like what? Something to the powers, x to the power, right? Each term would be like those, then with what? Coefficient in front of it. So it's many, many of those terms added together, right? X can be x to the 0 power, x to the 1 power, square, third, and on. Not the negative though. So your each n will be what? 0, 1, 2. Then also you have constant, right? And we will do add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So since it's a power, then we'll review some powers as well, okay? Usually we write it in the positive exponents. So if we have, remember this, x squared times x fifth, right? How many x's? Total. Shorthand writing. One term times one term. Mono times mono. 1 times 1, still one term, right? So if you have x squared, x fifth, x third, that will be total would be what? 10th, right? But if power on power, then x squared to the fifth. How many x's we have? That will be 10. You multiply them, right? And if we have x squared, one term, times x fifth, x third, one term times two terms, mono times bino, 1 times 2 would be 2 terms. Then you distribute, right? So that would be x7 plus x fifth. You need to differentiate them. One term times one terms, one term times one term times 1. 1, 1, 1 is still 1. But the 1 times 2 becomes 2 terms, right? We also learned negative exponent, right? Same thing, it applies to x negative 2 to the fifth would be what? X negative 10, right? Then if you have x negative 2 to the negative fifth would be what? You multiply power and power property, that would be positive 10, right? We also say anything to the 0 power is what? 1. Base cannot be 0, but power can be 0, right? So we say when we learn the polynomials with many, many terms, we also learn the powers, how to operate them, and use the property, even the power is negative, it should be okay, right? Then we say power, if it's negative, doesn't mean negative, it means what? Reciprocal, means 1 over x, right? X negative 2 means what? 1 over x squared, right? So we operate on the powers, then we simplify them. Okay, so we also did, let's review sum for the first one. It's the same thing as in your exam 3, we did this as well. So when you review for final, and you can use this review paper as well, and also your previous exams. Make sure you go through all those. See if you still remember, okay? So if we simplify this, what do we need to do? Too many x's, too many powers. So the simplest form is what? Just simple fraction. One numerator, one denominator, right? Then numbers with numbers. Then if just x, you should have one variable, same variable with one individual power, right? So we say, if so, we distribute. That means what? -3 take square, and x third take square. Here 4 take a -3rd power, right? And x squared take -3 power. Then here is x -2. Here is what? -3 and -4, multiply them would be 12, right? Then we do it individually. So -3 squared is what? 9. All of them are multiplying together, right? X 3 to the second would be power on power. You multiply x 6. 4 to the -3 is what? 4 -3. You cannot multiply them. You cannot see. We say negative exponent means what? Reciprocal. So this x is -6, right? This is a -2, right? Then when it's a negative power, we need to flip. So 9 is here, x6 is here. 4 to the -3, do we need to flip? Right? So this one is a -3, we need to write a 4. Once it flips, then negative power is gone. And do we need to flip this? Yes, to here, right? Then here is a -2, we need to flip to the top, becomes x squared, right? Then this is x12. So now you can see the number, right? Now the -3rd power. So that's 9. Total would be what? x8, right? Then here 4 to the 3rd power is 64. x6 to x12 is total would be 18. Okay? And you cannot leave answer there because too many x's at different places. You need to simplify. So 18 of them, you cancel out 8. So this is gone. So this one should be 10 left, right? Or you can say a minus 18 would be -10, which is flipped to the bottom would be x 10th power on the bottom, right? So your answer should be 964 x 10th power on the bottom, right? Okay, you need to practice yourself. Look at the, besides listening here, you should what? Practice yourself again from the original problem. See you can get same answer, right? So if we have this one, x to the -5, -4 to the what? -2 power. So for the -2 power, you have what? 3 elements in there. 6 is negative. That one is a real negative thing. negative 2 power is not real. It's what? Negative exponent, right? So it means reciprocal. So it's a negative 5 to the negative 2, y negative 4 to the negative 2, right? So this negative 6 is negative 2 power. X becomes what? Negative 5 times negative 2 is what? 10, right? Then let's see. Let me see. Original should be 4, here positive. So this y would be what? Negative 8, right? Then what do we have? And we say negative exponent doesn't mean negative. It means what? Reciprocal. So you need to flip that. Negative 6 is the whole thing, whole base. You need to put it inside the parentheses, right? So x 10 stay there. Do we flip the y to the negative 8th power? So that once you flip, become positive power, right? Then we can simplify our numbers as well. So negative 6 squared is 36, y 8th, then that's x to the 10th power. So that would be your answer as the simplest form, right? Okay, so for polynomials, we also learn the powers, how to operate the powers and simplify them as well. Then we do add, subtract, multiply, and divide, right? So let's see, let's do one division. Review one division. 2x squared plus 7x minus 10 divided x by x plus 5. So how should we start for a long division? Right, first one, 2 terms, you need the 2 terms. Then finish there, so your answer will be right on the top. And when we actually do the variables with powers, we only can divide one term to one term, right? To find the quotient one at a time. So we can only compare the first term to the first term. So first step, first quotient would be the first term into the first term. That would be what? 2x, right? So we will write our 2x here, right? Then next step would be multiplying back. Then you need to multiply both. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 5 becomes 10x. Right? Then next step, what do we need to do? We need to subtract the whole thing. So you need to subtract the whole thing, right? So 7 minus 10 would be what? Negative 3x, right? Then next step, we drop the negative 10. Then what's the next quotient again? So you compare first term to first term. So x can go into negative 3x. X would be what? Negative 3. That would be negative 3. Right? Then you multiply back. And that would be negative 3x minus 15. Right? Then we subtract them. Then be careful. This first term always cancel out. But next one, negative 10 minus negative 15 becomes what? Negative 10 plus 15 becomes what? Positive 5. So your remainder is 5. Right? Then for division, we also check. How do we check? We use what? The quotient, right? Your quotient times what? quotient times quotient times what? Divisor. Then if you plus your remainder, it should go back to the original, which is called dividend, right? Quotient, I was wondering how to spell. Okay. All right, so the result is 2x minus 3 times the divisor, x plus 5. Then if we plus the remainder 5, see if we can go back to the original question dividend, right? So 2x times 2x is 2x squared, 2x times 5 plus 10x, and bottom one minus 3x and minus 15. So it will be 2x squared plus 7x minus 15, right? Then if we plus 5, that would be 2x squared plus 7x minus 10. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So that would be our polynomials. And also for polynomials, we will have the scientific notations as well for the power, right? Let's look at the page 5. Okay, for scientific notations. So regular numbers, we call it a standard number, right? Then we have to change it to a scientific notation. That's 5 of them. So for scientific notations, we need to times 10 to the some power. Then for the regular number, you can only have one number before the decimal point. So that would be 8. The remaining one, you still need all the numbers. 3, 4, 7, 6, right? That's the number you need to put there. But from here, that change it to decimal from here. How many positions do you move? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So your number can be 7 or -7. Which number you think you need to use? Here is a smaller number turn into the big number, right? You need to have the positive exponent, right? So you need to have positive 7 there. Then for this one, you times 10 to the power, right? And for this number, you need to have one number, one digit before the decimal. That will be here, right? 8.1. Then how many places we moved from here to there? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can have 6 or -6, right? Which one you want? From the bigger number to the smaller number, you need to have a negative exponent. So it should be -6, right? So that's our scientific notations. And one more miscellaneous thing we learn is functions. Okay, so for functions, we have different symbols and to figure out the values. So if we have f of x, a function like this, okay, then g of x, another function, is this. So if we ask you what is f of 0, means what? F of x, y, g of x means your y, right? Those are your y's. So it means if x value is 0, what's your y? So you plug in here for f. X is 0, so you have 4, 0 squared plus 2 times 0. That would be what? 0, right? Then for next one, g negative 2, it means what? For function g, x is negative 2, what's your what? You plug in 3 negative 2 minus 1, that would be what? Negative 7. Right? Those are your answers. If we say f of 0 plus g of negative 2, what do we want you to do? That means you have the value of f of 0, value of g of negative 2. What's the total? F of 0 is what? 0. G of negative 2 is what? Negative 7. If you add them together, you should have negative 7. Right? So that's the symbols for the functions. How do you find your value of y? Also, we learn for functions, we have to decide if we have graphs like this. Is this a function? We use what? Vertical line test. For formal definition is what? They are ordered pairs for x and y's, but each x, you only have one y value. And we will check if it's a graph, if it's like this. Is this a function? No. Right? So, besides we have those symbols to find the values, we also use the graphs to decide if they are functions or not. Also, we want to find for functions, we want to find its domain and range, right? So let me see, that value is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 3, 4, right? Is this a function? Right? Vertical line test. Then what's your domain? What's your domain? It's all possible x values. How far you can go left and right. X is running this way, left and right, right? So left and right is negative infinity to infinity, right? What's your range? This value is 3, 0. Okay, so how far you can go up and down? So you cannot go down, you can only go up, from 0 up. From 0, so 0 up to infinity, right? You always write from smaller number to the larger number. Infinity, you always use parentheses. How about for this graph domain? It's the same thing. Left and right would be all real numbers, right? Then what's your range? Can go down forever, but limited up to here to 4. So that would be negative infinity up to 4, right? Then next page, on page 6, we also have this one, right? Then this point, let me see, cannot see, negative 4 and 3. Here is negative 4 and 3. This point would be 5 and negative 4. 5 and negative 4, right? So what's your domain? Left and right from here to there would be, let me see, that's negative 6 and 3. So from negative 6 to 5, right? Negative 6 to 5, your range will be up and down, this negative 4 to 3. Always write it from the smaller number to a larger number. So for this one, okay, is this a function? What's your domain? Left and right, or real numbers, right? Infinity to infinity. What's the range? It doesn't go up and down, just right there for 3. So just one number. Then you use the curly to write, put them in there. If it's just numbers, a few numbers you put into the basket, okay? Then we also said for functions, domain has restrictions for the condition, because if we say, okay, my f of x, which is my y, equals 1 over plus 7, right? It's a fraction, it has a restriction. You can just plug in x for anything except what? -7, because it will make the denominator 0. We cannot do that. So your domain is what? All real numbers except -7. Okay? You don't know the range because you have to see the graph to see it when you use the calculators in your 154A class. Then you can decide. So next one, if f of x is 1 over -6, means what? X can be all real numbers except, which one? 6, right? We make the numbers denominator 0. And f of x equals x plus 10. For the numerator x, we don't have to worry about it because you can plug in anything. But denominator has restriction. So it will be what? All real numbers except which one? -10, right? Next one, problem I, we are going to skip. Okay, so that will be our final. Then you want to look back for all your exams, 1, 2, 3, take a look. See if you still remember, and also review this paper as well for the final. That will be our last review and for this course on your video.